Good morning if you are in the West Coast, and good afternoon if you are joining us from the East Coast, and good evening if you are joining us from across the ocean or Turkey, as most of our, I think all of our guests, speakers today, the panelists are. My name is Baki Tezcan, and I'm the, the organizer of the Turkey Now and What's Up series. I will just share my screen with you for a second. There you go. And you all know why you are here. 100 Years, 100 Objects, an alternative history of Turkey in the Centennial of the Republic. And you will soon hear from our moderator, Meral Camcı, about the panelists. She'll introduce them. I'm here just to introduce our next event. Also on November 11th, we will have another WhatsApp meeting that will focus on the memory of Halil İnalcık, whom we lost a few years ago. Some of her students, that is Linda Darling and Fariba Zarnebaf, they recently co-edited a volume in his honor. So some of the contributors to that volume will be with us. Now, let me introduce to you our moderator, Meral Camcı. She's an independent literary scholar, researcher, and translator, expelled from academia with a statutory decree with the other 406 academics after she signed the petition titled "We Won't Be a Party to This Crime," which is publicly known as the Peace Declaration, with more than 2,200 signatories from various universities in Turkey. And that was only in the first round. There were more signatures that were added later. She received her MA and PhD degrees in translation studies at Istanbul University. When dismissed, she was working as an assistant professor in translation studies department at Istanbul Yeni Yüzyıl University. She was arrested, imprisoned, and then released after a big public support campaign. After 2 years in Germany, as a PSI scholarship holder, she returned to Istanbul. As a peace signatory, dismissed by a statutory decree, she still cannot work at an academic institution in Turkey. She's continuing her studies at a Solidarity Academy, the Academics with No Campus, and Bilar Cooperative. And individually, she's conducting a research project on female translators' distinguished agency and role in Turkish society through translation during the late Ottoman and Republican eras. Meral Hocam, please go ahead.
Meral, shall I share the screen? Sorry. Thank you for the presentation, dear Professor Tezcan. I'm happy to be here and proud of being one of the authors of this project, 100 Years and 100 Objects, and moderate this valuable meeting today. While starting, I should like to say a few words on what has happened in Turkey recently. Most of the academicians involved in this project, mentioned project, came together to demand peace, as you have already mentioned, in 2016, because we regard social benefit and the pursuit of truth as an integral part of scientific work. Now, another colleague, another scientist was arrested 2 days ago in Turkey for seeking and expressing the truth in her field of expertise. Before I move on to the panel, I'd like to address her. Greetings to dear Professor Şebnem Korur Fincancı. She is not alone. She must be set free immediately. I would like to invite the international scientific community to cooperate with us on this topic of emergency. This is our call. And thank you, Bediz, for sharing the banner. After stating this, let me try to introduce our panelists one by one. Just before their presentations, as briefly as possible, for which they are all individuals and academicians, each of whom is doing very valuable work, working hard and still producing. What they will tell us about this project today is well worth hearing, definitely so. Welcome you all here today, and thank you all for joining us. In this very first round, each panelist will have 7 minutes or 2 or 3 minutes more. Then, of course, they will have the chance to make additions and take the floor in the question-answer section. Let me begin with Noémi Lévy-Aksu. She is the director of the Memory and Peace Studies team at Hafıza Merkezi Memory Center in Istanbul, and currently an invited professor at Freiburg University. She was an assistant professor in history at Boğaziçi University until 2017, when she was dismissed for signing the declaration we have just mentioned, Declaration for Peace. She's one of the trustees of the Center for Democracy and Peace Research, founded in London 2017, which runs 100 Years and 100 Objects project with Kültürhane. Noémi, can you briefly describe the process that brought us here together today, the context, dismissals, expulsions, or the purge after the peace declaration that we have met, solidarity efforts, and then the search for alternatives for knowledge production under these circumstances in Turkey, and the birth of the encyclopedia project. Now you have the word, dear Noémi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Meral, for your introduction, and thank you, Baki, for putting together this panel. Yeah, very briefly, in 7 minutes, that's a lot to talk about. But as you mentioned, actually, the encyclopedia, the 100 Years, 100 Object projects, is actually a product of all this context of crackdown on freedom and democracy, which unfortunately is going on today. And as you also mentioned, the Declaration for Peace was released in January 2016 to denounce state violence against civilians in the Kurdish region. It was followed by waves of repression against the signatories of the petition through hundreds of dismissals, more than 400 of dismissals by emergency decrees and other forms of dismissals as well, and also criminal prosecution of academics, hundreds of academics, and imprisonment of a few of them. And within this context, another important element is that very quickly mechanisms of solidarity started to emerge in an informal way, and then more and more in institutionalized ways as well. Solidarity academies in Turkey, solidarity networks in other countries, gathering academics who had been based there for a long time, and those who had to leave Turkey in 2016 and the following years. And in this context, in the UK, in London, the Centre for Democracy and Peace Research was founded in November 2017 by a group of signatories of the petition, including myself. And the aim was to support academics for peace and beyond this, support independent and critical knowledge production and transmission in Turkey. So we started by distributing emergency grants to dismissed academics in Turkey together with frontline defenders. And then there was this capacity building program to strengthen 8 solidarity academies in Turkey, based in Istanbul, Ankara, Izmir, Kocaeli, Eskişehir, and also Mersin, as Kültürhane was part of the project. And this capacity building was supported by the European Endowment for Democracy. And actually at the end of the project, both the European Endowment for Democracy, the CDPR, and the involved groups agreed that there was something more needed to continue these efforts beyond institutionalizations of these academias. Something needed to support knowledge production through a collaborative, innovative project. And the Sene Yüzneste project was Ulash's idea, so I will leave him tell about it, but I should say that as an historian, I found it immediately attractive, because we all know that Republican history needs innovative approaches, and the project was as such. So very briefly, what were the aim? First, rethinking the last 100 years of Turkey from a critical standpoint, and using objects, using material culture, not only to focus on social and cultural history, and obviously it's very central to the project, but also to address political issues and the darkest periods of Turkey, for instance, enforced disappearances in the 1990s in the Kurdish region. The second aim was also to make this critical scholarship more accessible. We are dealing with authors and editors who are no more in academia and who still fight for their reintegration into academia through all possible legal ways, but unfortunately not much results still. So using digital tools, using different formats, videos, podcasts, text, and so on, is a way to reach a broader public, included students, but not only them. And finally, beyond the content, I guess, giving also a visibility to these scholars and giving an opportunity for them to get together, to continue their work and to continue to produce knowledge and to conduct research on their topics. And I think that in this respect, this is a modest contribution to these efforts, but a significant one, and I hope that the project will continue through different ways to convey this scholarship, both in academia, but also beyond, to different audiences. Thank you.
Thank you very much for using the time so beautifully and for this comprehensive briefing, Noémi. And now it's our colleague Ulaş's turn. Ulaş Bayraktar was an associate professor of political science until he was expelled from the university with hundreds of colleagues for being among the petitioners of the call for peace. He has then founded a cafe library, Kültürhane, named Kültürhane, with other expelled scholars in Mersin, Turkey. Since then, they organized talks, meetings, and social events to sustain their relationship with the public and continue to read, reflect, write, and publish for the public good. Ulaş, can you tell us about the encyclopedia project as one of the facilitators and the initiators of the project, and the other works you have carried out in Mersin? And shall I remind you that you have also 7 minutes for this? Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Meral. And Baki, thanks for the invitation from the association. As started, I just want to send my feelings of solidarity to Şebnem Hoca, who is in fact the last victim of the history of Sisyphus here in Turkey. I mean, if you're trying to act independently, your destiny is to experience such an arrest as you did, or such an stigmatization. And we had our terms after the petition in 2016. It was just after the declaration of the petition, there was an exposition of book fair in Adana, and I've come across with one of the biggest publishing houses in Turkey, İletişim Yayınları, who had published some series of encyclopedias after the September 12th military coup in 1980. So I just proposed them I asked them what would they think about reproducing or relaunching that project of encyclopedias, as I've known hundreds of potential authors of such an encyclopedia. So they weren't interested at that time. And then we were expelled. It was before the decree. So we founded, as you said, this library cafe, Kültürhane, which in fact aimed not only the solidarity among the expelled intellectuals, scholars, and other people, but also with the re-strengthening the relationship with the public. So it was an experience, and as Noémi said, at the end of the first project of Solidarity Academicians, we just raised this idea: what about launching a project of encyclopedia with the participation of scholars, expelled or not, but in fact with a certain standing of opposition. And the idea was supported, and now we're at the end of that project. The idea of encyclopedia is important, in fact, in my opinion, interesting for some different reasons. First, normally, I mean, I'm a political scientist, so I know more or less members of this discipline, the political scientist, legalist. But after the petition, we came to know a lot of other scholars from different disciplines. I mean, from engineers, economists, lawyers, all that stuff. So it's impossible to gather all these people with different domains of experience on a common project, a book project, an article or a volume of an periodical. It's impossible because we have to focus to a discipline. Encyclopedia, the idea of encyclopedia could meet our need to have an eclectical common work. So that was an idea on which we can gather around, no matter from which disciplines we are coming from. So an engineer, we have engineer authors, an economist and lawyer, everybody could work on this collective project. So that was the idea of encyclopedia. But after I heard about a project of BBC with the British Museum, they had chosen, I don't remember the number, but a number of objects from the British Museum to tell the history of humanity. So that idea was, I love that idea because it would let us have original project, not like the other encyclopedias we have a lot in Turkey, but a different one with a different epistemology, with a different pedagogy. Because with the experience of Kültürhane, we have seen that in fact academic universities in Turkey are more or less even quite apart, separated from the public in general. Okay, there's a university there, a gated campus with the academicians talking and reflecting on some specific issues on which the public is not quite interested or could not follow, could not understand. So for example, here in Kültürhane, what we try to do is to translate that scientific academic knowledge so that the general public could have an idea or could participate, could contribute to that. So that object idea was great, because in that sense we could use our scientific knowledge and experience, a specific technical knowledge, in a way that the general public could follow, could share, could contribute to that. I think Bediz will tell about the details of the project. So in brief, this idea of encyclopedia was a tool not only to come together among ourselves, I mean to work on a project with independent from our disciplines, so to solidarity among ourselves, to strengthen, to keep the relationship within this community, but also to transfer this knowledge to a general public in a way that they can understand, they can share. So social media posts, Wikipedia project, all those movies, all those instruments that we used all along the project was the product, or was the output of this orientation. Let me stop at that point, and maybe the coordinators of the project will tell more details about it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for this introduction, Ulaş. And as you say, Bediz will take the word from here, and she will talk about how the project is carried out. Bediz Yılmaz is the coordinator of the project, and she received her PhD degree from the French Institute of Urban Studies with a dissertation on the social exclusion of forced migrants in a slum neighborhood in Istanbul. Her research interests include migration, urban and rural poverty, spatial segregation, social exclusion, gender, and social policies. After working as an assistant professor of the Department of Public Administration at Mersin University for more than 10 years, she has been dismissed for having signed for peace petition of the Academics for Peace, as the many other panelists here. Between February 2017 and October 2018, she was a Philip Schwartz Fellow in the Institute of Migration Research and Intercultural Studies at University of Osnabrück. Since then, she lives in Mersin and then Istanbul, and practices regenerative agriculture in the urban and rural areas of the cities, and continues academic work as an independent researcher. Now, dear Bediz, the word is yours.
Thank you, Meral, for this introduction. And I would like to thank Professor Baki Tezcan for having received the project very nicely, and trying to integrate this work to the Ottoman Turkish Studies Association's work. And I hope that the solidarity will continue. I would like to share my screen with you. I prepared a presentation. I do not trust my English. So I'm not sure whether 7 minutes will be enough to present all these 2 years of efforts, but I will be as brief as possible. So
you may have done.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Because you're talking about the project as a whole. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So Noémi and Ulaş told about the how this project appeared and funded. So the issue is to approach the Republican history through objects, and this is an online encyclopedia project. And we are now reaching the end of this 2 years, and this is largely a work of Peace Academics, both with its executive team and the editorial board, as well as the authors. So it is being carried out by the CDPR and Kültürhane with the generous support of European Endowment for Democracy. So very briefly, as Ulaş said, how it appeared, it was the BBC's A History of the World in 100 Objects. And the main outcome of our project is an online accessible encyclopedia of the Republican history of Turkey, around 100 objects. So at the end, there will be 100 texts written by 100 academic experts in their field, where we are prioritizing dismissed academics and independent scholars. And with each entry will point to significant political, social, economic, and cultural transformations and processes witnessed by Turkey. And these texts will be accompanied by podcasts, and videos are being prepared for a few significant objects. Putting the objects at the center of the narrative gives the opportunity to interrelate some seemingly unrelated events and stories. I will share some examples of this, both from collective memory and from personal memories, because objects carry and transmit different layers of meanings attributed to them in terms of time and space. They have different meanings in different periods, in different cities, in different, for different classes. Which can at all, they have a very significant contribution to the social and political and cultural history. So, and subaltern groups might have different connections and memories to an object. So when you put the object at the center, you have the opportunity to gather these memories also. And throughout the project, we also try to include other types of material from popular culture, from literature, from music, or from arts in general. And the objectives are to foster independent knowledge production in Turkey, to become an independent and a reliable source of information, to become a reference source for researchers and students, other than the official history. As I said, editors and authors are selected in priority among peace academics who are subject to political repression for their commitment to free speech, peace and democracy, especially young scholars. And the content is not pre-established, but it is decided interactively during the process in a collective manner. We try to do this. A multiplicity of methods is used. We held some public campaigns, public surveys through social media. We held meetings with Solidarity academics. We organized thematic workshops, did video interviews, and we tried to have illustrated content and surveys, as I said. And gender equality and inclusivity was at the center of our perspective. I'll now try to give a broad view So we had 2 years of the project. It will end at the end of this year. And the first year, we can call it as a digging. We try to have some remindings from public memory, search for private memories to recall them, try to have people recalled from their memories, and reveal relationalities. Just as an example, I would like to give the bed sheet, which is a very everyday item in our houses, which can carry very different meanings, very different connotations. So we presented this in our social media as very, in its simplest way. This is the sheet that we put on the bed, and we tried to connect to this other usages of the bed sheet. For example, in Silvan in 2015, the bed sheets were used to protect the civilians from the snipers. The name, the bed sheet, is also the name for chador in Turkey. So it has another memory in the public memory. It also has a connotation related to the loss of virginity. And to our surprise, we received a note from a member of the LGBTI community that in one of their books there was a story told by a trans member of the association, that they used the bed sheets to run, to escape from the police officers who came to their houses in Cihangir. And they used to tie them one by one from the 5th floor, from the 4th floor, to go down the street and run away from the police officers who tortured them at that time. So these all came together around a very simple object. And we tried to dig the memories to let people remember some events, usually sorrowful events or violent events, which can be from recent history or which can date back to the beginning of the Republic. For example, here, this is from an explosion in the mines. This is Berkin Elvan, killed in the Gezi events. Also the tree from the Gezi, the tree and the tent from the Gezi events. The headscarf issue also, and lack of food during the Second World War. So the first year was the digging of memories. And trying to decide the 100 objects collectively. I will be dealing in detail in a few minutes, but in the second year we tried to build we chose the 100 objects, and then in the second year we tried to build our narrative around these objects. So we shared the social media posts just around the 100 objects, again with the same quest for recalling some events and memories. So you see different examples from our posts. So while searching for the 100 objects, how to decide, we launched some questions in the social media. I don't have time to translate all of them, but we had questions related to different periods or different objects or different events. And then we held thematic workshops, 6 in total. You can read each of them, where we had 4 to 5 invited speakers who all presented an object of their that they chose, and around 40 participants, where we asked the speakers to ask a question about their objects. So I'll try to give an example of this, because here you see the questions asked by the speakers of the gender workshop, gendered objects workshop. And we received the answers from the participants of the workshop, but also we re-asked this through our social media, and we collected the answers there too. And we received quite a high number of answers, and very interesting answers too. So we collected them, and we analyzed them in a way to see which objects can be significant, for example, for gender issues, or for for class issues, for migration, for social and political history, etc. And we also had different instruments in a way. For example, an object and memory drawings by Aslı Alpar, or interviews with experts on different objects, which all served us to choose the 100 objects. And in the second year, we had some byproducts, if it is all right to call as such. We now have 2 of them, and the third is on the way. 10 to 12 minutes videos produced by Fine Studios, interestingly bringing together the contents of the articles written on these subjects, which also are translated to English by Noémi, and they are broadcasted on YouTube. And we try to choose each time an object which can be a witness of the Republic from the beginning till the end, and have very different layers of meanings. This can be interesting for the historians, I think, because one of the byproducts is a guide of digital resources. Now 264 resources are compiled together. This can be achieved through our website, and you can search for any question you have, any subject you have in mind, among the digital resources available online, and usually free of charge. This is prepared by Sinan. So at the end, we will be having a website full of these texts on 100 objects, as well as all the preparatory works I showed, and the podcasts for the visually impaired. And the website will look as you will have the looks as you see. Each object will include some photographs or other kinds of visual material. And at the end, we hope that this project succeeds in showing that objects are not only witnesses, silent witnesses of our lives, but they also have a power in shaping the society or the lives, both in material and in immaterial ways. And they cover a wide range of stories, and they can bring together very different stories, which is interesting to see the relationship between these stories, and that it becomes an informative alternative resource. And thanks a lot.
Thank you, Bediz. It's quite amazing workflow here. Thank you for sharing us all these recollections and virtues. Thank you. And now the time is running. Tülin Ural is the next speaker, the panelist, one of the colleagues. She's one of the authors of one of the entries of this project, and she will be talking about the process from the intellectual emergence of this entry she wrote in the encyclopedia to the stage when it was written down. She is graduated from Boğaziçi University, Department of Sociology, and she completed her master's degree at Atatürk Institute of the same university in March 2008. Then at the Department of Sociology at Mimar Sinan University, she received her doctorate by defending the thesis titled Etiquette Books, Social Change and Transformation of Everyday Life in Turkey between 1930 and 1939 with Meral Özbek as her advisor. She gave lectures in the field of history and sociology at various universities. She has written many articles about and book chapters. The issues she is most curious about are what are the deep-rooted codes in our mental worlds from the past to today, and how they are transformed through the modernization process. She is trying to follow these codes in areas such as daily life, novels, popular culture, and good manners. She is also the mother of 20-year-old Çınar and 7-year-old Derin. Now, Tülin, dear Tülin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this opportunity and for this kind presentation. And I also was indeed one of the signatories of this peace petition, but I was one of the lucky ones because our director of my institute, didn't give this damned list to the Higher Council of Education, Council of Higher Education of Turkey. And how I was connected with this project. Everything is started with an invitation from Bediz, and she invited me to one of the online kind of workshop, and I organized around the project, and I presented here the kitchen utensils, forks, etc. Because in my dissertation mentioned by Meral, I have written some things on them because it was on the table manners. Yani one of the chapters was about the table manners. And then I realized that, and there was a great interest in this workshop. And I realized that talking about forks or knives, etc., that has something different, because these objects are so ordinary. They are so part of the everyday life. They are not like sculptures, for example. Sculptures also, of course, part of the public life, etc., but they are not so within the houses. So around such a project with political, let's say, intentions too, it's not so easy to construct a text for such an ordinary object. Already it changed too. I didn't write about utensils, but I write about sofra. Sofra itself is something very difficult to define because it means both the object on which food is eaten and every object. You may understand from the there is a kind of hill that you put on the floor and you can eat on it, and to the table. And everything placed on this object. And it also means the community of people gathered around this object to eat, drink, and talk. And there is two dimensions at the same time, like everything related to eating and drinking. On the one hand, there is something very material, both the table itself, both what you eat, and on the other hand, there is a cluster of meanings formulated around these objects. So in the entry, I tried to organize the text around both of these dimensions, and it was a project very challenging for me intellectually too, because it was the first time that I have a history background, etc. But it was the first time that I tried to think around something so material, and it was challenging and very exciting to follow the modern history of Turkey through such a material thing, let's say, and with such an object, such an ordinary object, it's not too easy to find sharp breaks and turning points. For example, when you compare to a technological object, let's say, and I tried to show that in Sofra, which seems today to exist since eternity and whose existence seems very natural, is in fact historically and socially constructed. I started with a historical background of the, let's say, table manners in the West. How pork emerged as a prosthesis invented by civilization, let's say. How it shows us the rise on the threshold of disgust, etc., etc. And then I gave a very short history of the change of, let's say, sofra and table manners in the 19th century Ottoman Empire, in this period of great modernization. How when, for example, we see first forks on the tables of Ottoman bureaucracy, or when we see first tables instead of yer sofrası. But I always try to keep in mind that there is a great class dimension on these things, and yes, there is some change, there is some transformation, but it doesn't mean that it's influenced the whole society, the whole of the society. Then I discussed a little bit about the sofras of the early Republican periods. I gave many not many, but some interesting examples from my books of good manners from this period. And I try to understand how modern and Western lifestyle is put as a clear political goal, and how this goal was realized at the table too, as many elements of daily life, but how also it remains limited to a middle class, and how the real majority of the Turkish population, the peasantry, for example, continued to eat in traditional ways. And the real turning point came in 1950s. Like in many other dimensions of Turkish history, in daily life too, great masses of people met with modern life after this huge migration waves. And from this point on, many things started to change, to transform, but very, very slowly. And then I scrutinized the thing in the cinema and literature, how different representations of Sofra are constructed, let's say, and what all of these representations mean in terms of being modern or being traditional, let's say. And finally, I finished the entry with its contemporary meaning, with the meaning of Sofra today, and with the and I also mentioned how this sharp symbolic distinction between the table and the yer sofrası appears at the political level too. For example, every Ramazan, the Erdogan family show up in a slum and break their fast, particularly at the yer sofrası, and in this way, with the symbol of yer sofrası, they spread their message, which is of course a populist propaganda. And
Tülin'cim,
yes,
could you please?
I finished.
No, it's amazing. Your presentation is amazing, but we have to other speakers and then question and answer session.
It was already finished. Thank you very much.
I thank you. It's amazing. From such an ordinary, utensils on the tables to a history, to recollections, it's fantastic. And now we have the other speaker, Zeynep Yelçe, one of the colleagues. She is a researcher and instructor at Foundations Development Directorate and coordinator for humanities courses at Sabancı University. She completed her MA thesis, Ideal Kingship in the Late Medieval World, the Ottoman Case, 2003, and her PhD dissertation, The Making of Sultan Süleyman, a study of process of image making and reputation management, 2009, at Sabancı University with Metin Kunt as her advisor. Her research interests include early modern power structures, court studies, and ritual studies. She is currently working on news and information networks in the Mediterranean. In the first half of the 16th century, she is a translator and an associate editor of the Journal of Turkish and Ottoman Studies.
Zeynep became one of our colleagues who was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. Later, this provision was overturned by the Constitutional Court, and all peace academics were acquitted, fortunately so. I should like to give an emphasis on this once again. Zeynep, can you tell us how the translation team was formed for this project and how it works, and how the translation editorial works for this project? And now the word is yours. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Now, when Otsa was informed about the project and was interested in it, there was a decision to include the project in the Centennial Republican issue next year. So there will be a section featuring around 10 articles in English in that special issue. And as an associate editor of the journal, I will be kind of helping out and coordinating the process. So my function in all this was actually bringing the speaker before me, dear Tülin, and our dear translator, Hümeyra, together on paper. So, I mean, this is a total coincidence, I think, for this panel. So Tülin wrote the source article, and Hümeyra will, in a minute, tell us how she felt translating it. And all this, we used the program for undergraduate research, PURE, of Sabancı University, which is a program in summer terms open to all undergraduate students in Turkey. In the normal fall and spring semesters, it's only open to Sabancı University students. But last summer, we were lucky to have a wide group of applications. The program was, or the project Internationalizing Scholarship in Turkish was specifically founded to translate the articles of this project. So we took 10 articles that were already ready, and a group of 5 translators, undergraduate students, translated them. Our call was open to a variety of social sciences students, but here you wouldn't see the translation because Sabancı University doesn't have a translation program, and we worked with 5 Boğaziçi University students who were continuing their education in translation studies. So they all each translated 2 articles. They collaborated, they had an office, they were there together every day. So they collaborated on their work. The aim was to train these students in collaborative projects and kind of to have them experience in a project more or less involved in social science or history rather, or sociology, you might call it, how such culture-specific texts are actually our research projects, because they had to kind of do some of the research all over again to put it in context, go to the main source to translate, and so on and so forth. Hümeyra will talk more about the methodology. For me, it was like a laboratory. Actually, perhaps I learned a lot more than they did, because as historians, political scientists, sociologists, we are entitled to our own opinion when we're producing something. The translators are not entitled to that. So they have to be objective. They don't get to say what they think. They don't get to say how they feel about it, but they just have to work on it. So that is always, I mean, being a translator myself, that's always kind of a difficult thing. It's a challenge sometimes. So I got to experience that. During the fall and semester, we will be working with 2 Sabancı University students, psychology students this time, which I find quite valuable again. And we will do as much as we can. Next term, there will be another set of students under the project. And in summer, I'm hoping that we will again be working with translation students and kind of probably be able to, at the end of the summer, reach 20-25 translated articles. But I hope we can continue this until all articles are translated by next October. Even if they are not published in JOTSA, they could perhaps be put on the website for the international audience. And in the end of each project term, we have the translated articles. We have a presentation for the whole Sabancı University community. We have a final report, which is again kind of especially the final report of the Boğaziçi group was quite important because this is now our foundational kind of training work for the other groups to come, whether they're translation students or not, and a poster to kind of again used for the community. And thank you, Hümeyra will tell us more about the methodology and how they did the translations.
Thank you, Zeynep, for this speech on the translational process of yours in general. Now we have Hümeyra Gülmez as one of the translators of the translation team. With a great interest in learning languages, she decided to take English courses at NIDA University first. After these courses, she got into translation studies at Boğaziçi University in 2017. She took different language classes to deeply understand the structures of the languages, e.g. German, Spanish, Korean, and Japanese. She dropped the former 2 language courses and has been continuing with the latter 2, Korean and Japanese courses. Right now, she is a senior student with academic aspirations. After graduation, she aims to get a master's degree in Korean and Japanese studies and wants to specialize in comparative linguistics. I will leave the word to you, Hümeyra, hoping that all this will come true. Could you now briefly tell us about the translation process from your perspective as a translator? Thank you.
I thank you, Meral, for this lovely introduction. So I will be sharing my screen. Okay. Again, I'm sharing my screen, yeah. Okay, first of all, it was a very entertaining and interesting project for us for Boğaziçi students. We worked, as Zeynep Hocam said, with her project supervisor. Our project supervisor was Zeynep Hocam. And we were at Sabancı University the last summer and did spent very good time together as a group of translators. Five of us all from Boğaziçi University. We were from Translation and Interpreting Studies department, and we translated 10 articles written on 10 objects, as Zeynep Hocam said, and we took different methodologies while translating, and we worked together to have a consistency while translating these articles. You can see the names of my friends here. And we experienced some challenges. Actually, this is very common while translating articles, while translating things. Every translator encounters challenges. And in this project, there were some culture-specific elements that challenged us. Because every article were full of culture-specific things and didn't make any sense in the target culture in English. So we had to find an exact equivalence in the target culture, or we had to leave it as it is and give a footnote on the bottom of the page. There were some different ways for us to take. And there were some complex sentence structures in the articles, and they didn't make any sense when we translated them as a full sentence. And then we divided them into 2 or 3 sentences while translating. And also there were some old Turkish words, Ottoman words, that even we didn't understand. And there were some word plays. I will give a few examples from these challenges. This is an example from the article T that I translated. Here you can see the kıtlama word. It is a very well-known word for Turkish people. We know it, and it's very common in the east side of Turkey, in Iran or Syria, in Afghanistan, but it is not well-known in Western countries. In these situations, I personally took the approach of leaving it as it is. You can see here I left it as kıtlama, and in this example it was very easy for me because the writer also explained in the sentence what kıtlama is, so it wasn't very difficult for me to leave it like that. But sometimes it is not understandable in the sentence what that word means. Then we left a footnote on the bottom of the same page for readers to understand, or we wrote the Turkish equivalence in the parentheses. So here you can see another cultural object, bardak. In Turkish, it is when we say in Turkish bardak, glass, we immediately think about, while drinking tea, of course, we immediately think about slim-waisted glass. But in the Western countries, it's said as a cup of tea, and people think mug or other kind of tea glasses. So I wanted to leave it as glass, and I wanted my reader to come to Turkish culture and to understand more about Turkish culture. Actually, this is an approach in translation area. This is a debated issue on translation studies. And I took this methodology. You translate a text like you translate a text, and you took your reader, bring your reader into the target culture. So I wanted English-speaking people to feel Turkish culture, to feel authors' mentality, and understand the culture as native do. So another example from my friend's article, as you can see here, there are so many old words, Ottoman words, tayyare, ishar, itmam. Yes, we understand these words, but mütemmimat, it is a very difficult word for even Turkish people, and it is not used in daily conversations. In these situations, my friends tried to find the contemporary Turkish of the word, then translated it into English. So we did first intralingual translation, then interlingual translations. So in the second part of my presentation, I would like to talk about cat tools. While translating, we used a cat tool, Smart Cat. But before talking about more cat tool, Smart Cat, I would like to differentiate two concepts, machine translation and cat tools. Generally, people confuse about cat tools. They think cat tools are just machine translations, but they are not. Machine translations does the translation for you, but in the cat tools, you do the translation by the help of cat tools, which means computer-aided translation tools. There are more than 50 cat tools around the world, and the most important and famous one is SDL Trados. I think it is the first one as well. And then comes MemSource, Cross, and SmartCat. Most of them are paid. You have to pay to use them, but SmartCat was free, so we used it while doing our translations. This is the general interface of translation tools. They have so many features like term banks, translation memories, machine translation as well. Machine translation is embedded in the cat tool, and you can use it while you're using the cat tool, which is of course paid, and quality assurance features. This is the translation page of SmartCat. While translating, we upload the we upload the document in the SmartCat, and it shows like this. On the left side, on the left column, you see the original text, the source text, and on the right side, you see the target text. Translator use these segments to translate. And here you can see the query check part. If you misspell a word, it immediately warns you, hey, you misspelled this word, you should check this out, kind of warning, and it really works. On the upper side, you see a bar, translation progress. You can track your translation progress by looking at this one. It is really important while doing translation, because sometimes we translators are lost in translation and we don't know when it will be finished. So when you look at this one, oh, okay, 10% is left. So you got this, girl, come on, kind of support we get from this. And here you can see the term base. When you save a term into the term base, it shows up here whenever you encounter that again. So that's all my presentation. To sum up, I can say every translation is a challenge and every translation is a research project, because while doing research, you learn so many things. You have to search so many things, and while doing this research, you learn so many things as well. So thank you for your attention. This is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Hümeyra, for this beautiful presentation about the translation work that I am very fond of, and the foreignizing methodology that you used is quite amazing to transfer this amazing project into English-speaking world. Thank you. And thanks to all our panelists. Now we have wrapped up our first session. Now we can leave the word to the audience of this panel. If you have questions or recommendations, criticisms, or whatever, you may use the chat box, or just you may take the word and speak them up. I can see Tülin wants to say something.
I want to say a very brief verse. I would like to thank Hümeyra for her translation. Thank you very much, really.
It's quite a work to translate, to transfer all these into English, into another language. Actually, it's quite culturally specific, project, as just Hümeyra has mentioned about it. And now Hümeyra, and then Baki Hoca.
I personally want to thank you, Tülin Hocam, because your article was the best one. I think while reading it, I really enjoyed it. And while translating, it was very beautifully written. I mean, it wasn't difficult to translate. Your sentences were very great and in place. So thank you very much for that awesome article.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. I have questions, but before I ask any questions of my own, I just want to remind everyone the chat conversations are wonderful for us who are in the Zoom meeting, but when we are recording, the chat conversations don't get recorded. And so what I was going to ask was maybe some of the chat dialogues could actually be carried over to real time with, so that it would be in the YouTube video that we will share. Müge Hocam, would you like to share what you said? And then Bediz Hocam, Noémi, you responded to her. Maybe you could have, basically, I'm asking you to repeat your conversation for the recording of the YouTube. And then I do have questions, but I'm going to let Müge Hocam speak first.
Thank you very much. I mean, I usually here we try to do things on the chat so as not to disturb the flow. It was an amazing presentation. I'm extremely impressed by what you have done. But since I'm usually very practice oriented, I always said, okay, now what can we do to make this, institutionalize this over a long term and basically organize and mobilize around it maybe. I mean, because it's a very important new critical space that you have created. And by internationalizing it, we can also draw funds from all over, because obviously within Turkey, we are excluded at the moment because of the political situation. So that's why, I have done some translation before. I'd love to help you with that. It will be a pleasure and an honor to help you. But in addition, I was also thinking of how could we make this, continue. And I'm thinking that, everyday objects is a wonderful way of starting this. When you said 100 objects, I was thinking, because I work on violence, that we could also do something similarly, not 100 maybe, but maybe a shorter thing with things like falaka, cinsel taciz, or things like that, and then see how they have transformed over time, because that would also enable us to bring in much more prominently how violence is meted out very differentially, depending on who you are, what class you come from, what your gender and sexuality is, or your ethnicity. I mean, so that's what I was thinking of. I'm sort of, because I'm in the social sciences, we try to raise a lot of money, mostly for our students as well. So that's why I was most impressed by the fact that you brought in your undergraduates to work with you, because that's one thing we found out when we did the workshop on Armenian Turkish scholarship, is that we always made sure that in addition to having the prominent senior scholars in the field, we would also have students, graduate students and undergrads. And in a way, that was how we were able to sustain the project over 20 years. Thank you. So those are just my insights, and I'm here to help. And my email is my last name, Gosek, because we're in the United States, at UMich, like the University of Michigan, .edu. Thank you so much.
Bediz Hocam or Noémi, would you like to say a few things in response, ideas that you could perhaps follow up with on this?
Yes, I'd like to thank a lot to all those persons who offered a contribution. In fact, yes, we try to follow the project, have a follow-up of the project to continue the effort with a book maybe or an exhibition, and also with the translation of all the articles and an international dissemination, of course. And all contributions are welcome for this. But of course, our project, as Noémi said, our project is only a part of an overall effort in Turkey of those who are outside the academia. And there are many solidarity academies, many informal collectives who really try to produce knowledge outside the established academia, or within, like Tülin maybe, but outside the academia also. So it would be very, very valuable to first of all share and help the dissemination of the works done, and try to find funds for those who are remained in Turkey, because usually the efforts go to the institutions. From the international perspective, the efforts are to those who go abroad with scholarships or awards, but those who are in Turkey and those who try to do very valuable work also need your support in many ways.
Sağ olun Bediz Hocam. Thank you very much. I'm going to go through the chat, not to forget anyone, because there were also, I think, a few questions by people who left. For instance, Nathan Young from Ohio State had to go teach, and he appreciated the presentation very much. And he asked a question whether, to what extent does this expand themes explored by Orhan Pamuk in the Museum of Innocence? So did that ever come up in your discussions, Orhan Pamuk and his novel, The Museum of Innocence? I believe he actually opened the museum after writing the novel. Did you at all think about it, or did you do anything with it or with him at all?
Ulaş, would you like to say a few words about it, or shall I? Yes, we talked about it a lot, and I visited the museum and I met the curator of the museum, and because that was at the beginning of the project, and we had this exhibition in mind very vividly. But then after meeting the curator, an artist, she told me that they had a very big financial opportunity, and they worked for 2 years. They went to the antique shops and museums and collected items from there. If you visit the museum, it's really very, very impressive. And our project is not connected to the museum, but we have many points in common, of course, in having this perspective of objects, how they shape the lives of people, or a period can be understood through objects.
Thank you.
If you have an addition.
Thank you. I'm going to see whether we missed any other thing that is written on chat. There is also another volunteer to help with translation, and I think let me see. Meltem Toksöz. Meltem, formerly from Boğaziçi, she is now here in the East Coast, and that'd be great. Meltem, thank you so much. And I see one more person who offered helping. I should recognize. Elżbieta Swieciczka. I most probably didn't pronounce that name correctly, but thank you, from Sweden. A scholar, she also shared her contact. And Civan Günel who also shared contacts. So so that actually help could be provided more with the translation. This is great. This is really great, because one of the things at JOTSA we were thinking about was if there are going to be 100 articles, we cannot publish all of them because we can only publish so much in an issue as a special dossier. We also have regular articles, but we were thinking maybe we could continue doing the translation project thanks to Zeynep, and then maybe that could be hosted on a website like OTSA's website as well as your website. So it looks like with this help, maybe we can see through all 100 items getting translated. That would be wonderful. And I'm going to just go through the chat all the way down. Yes, I think that's it. And I don't see any other question. Now I'm going to come and ask Michael. Oh, Müge Hocam, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Because you mentioned the publication, I work with a lot of different publishing houses like IB Tauris, Bloomsbury, or Oxford, or Cambridge, and all the others, in between. So I'll be more than happy to help you pitch the project, because they usually ask me, they say, please send our way anything you think is coming up. And I have helped the publication, quite a number of things. So, I'll be more than happy to work with you in that, getting it published as well, especially since it's in English. It will be much easier. Usually we have a lot of trouble if it's written in Turkish, because then it has to be translated. And that's what makes the project actually very internationally, viable and fundable. Yeah, that's
Thank you. Thank you, Müge Hocam. Ulaş Hocam, I had a question for you. When we have speakers join us from Turkey, very often they come from Istanbul, or maybe Ankara, but I'm so glad that we are hosting you. You are from Mersin. That we don't receive a lot of news from Mersin, and I would love to hear a little bit more about Kültürhane. You mentioned you're bringing scholarship to the public engages. So how does Kültürhane work on a daily basis outside this project? Like not necessarily in the Yüz Sene Yüz Nesne, but what do you do at Kültürhane? What happens there?
Thanks for this opportunity. I mean, the idea was before our expel. I mean, before the state of emergency, our colleagues had to leave the country, leaving their books behind in boxes. So the initial idea was to free those books in a library, so that we could sustain their access to the students, to the scholars, and to public in general. So the idea was long before our decree, the idea of a library, but we couldn't convince the public institutions to open such a library. And after the decree, immediately we launched this project. So it's a library. In fact, it's an important library, I would admit. We have more than 10,000 volumes of books and periodicals accessible through our catalog, online catalog. So on one hand, we have the library. In fact, I mean, to be frank, the books are not consulted very much. The students and scholars come here to study in the cozy study hall. So it's a place where they can come, where they can just prepare for the exams, do their homeworks, or work there on their ongoing researches. But it was impossible for us to fund that library without any financial income. So the idea of cafe came up. I mean, we were obliged to have a financial resource for this purpose. So now, on the one hand, we have the library. On the other hand, we have the cafe. But from the beginning, we didn't want it to be an ordinary cafe where we only sell coffee, tea, and bakery. So we transformed that place, the cafe, as a free speech public space, public venue. So from the beginning, we started organizing talks, concerts, workshops, movie projections, all that stuff. So it became a very lively public space. We organized more than hundreds of talks, invited especially expert scholars or stigmatized academicians, intellectuals, but we didn't want it to become an academy, let's say, where these scholars, where experts meet and discuss in technical specific terms. So we always call them talks. So I see a lot of faces who had the floor in cafe, and so our audience is not only those interested people who with a specific, our neighbors or the undergrad students or other people who just come here. And for this purpose, we try to keep the scope of activities as large as possible. So there's movie projections, not only artistic movies, but very popular movies. We have the concerts, we have the very popular talks on bicycles, on sailing, on motorcycles. And we just wanted to transform this place as a meeting place. So Mersin is a Mediterranean city, a middle-sized city with a culture of multiculturalism. I see faces. I take everybody to the graveyard of this city because it's exceptional, with all people from different religions lying side to side. It's unbelievable as a scene. I mean, a Jew grave just next to a Christian one, just next to a Muslim grave. That's incredible. We are just working on this on a documentary of this graveyard. So with the pandemic, I mean, we lost our financial resource, since the cafe had to be closed down. So we started producing online content. So short movies, documentaries on these local people, local places, local history. And so we celebrated our 5th anniversary last Saturday, and it became a very important place for cultural activities. Today, this was, for example, we hosted a workshop of Bianet on the journalism, ecological journalism. There were more than 30, 40 journalists, activists coming here and chatting on daily occasions. So we founded a foundation. It was a private company. Now we have also an association, Kültürhane Association. We try to develop projects to fund our activities, to host people and to keep this place running. So it's I call it a new way of sharing and disseminating knowledge, not only specific knowledge, but personal experiences and popular knowledge. So we have our social media channels, mainly in Turkish, unfortunately, but the adventure continues. I mean, with the support of a lot of faces here. Apart from this Kültürhane, I just wanted to underline, after we didn't have any idea about this, but then we started getting interested on the philosophical side of it. Graham Harman, Bruno Latour, all that object-oriented ontology, we had no idea about it, but then we discovered that our orientation corresponds to a new epistemology, new ontology, of which Graham Harman and Bruno Latour recently we lost. So it's very interesting to see that this are very amateur undertaking also had reflections without knowing in the philosophy. So it was interesting to discover that.
Thank you so much, Ulaş Hocam. This is so exciting. The project is very exciting, but what I'm hearing from you about what you're doing is also very exciting. I hope there are other places like that in other cities. This sounds amazing. You seem to have sort of turned a disaster into an opportunity to do something very new, and something that brings people together, that brings academy closer to the people. In a sense, I mean, of course, one would hope that nothing like that would have ever happened, but what you did with it is truly amazing. I really congratulate you. I hope one day I don't spend as much time in Turkey as I would like to, but if I spend enough time to get out of where my research area, Istanbul, I'll visit, and hopefully we'll have tea together.
You are very welcome, but our dream is not to return to universities, is to open a wedding house. So because the place is not big enough, so we want to have a wedding house with more funding and a larger space. So maybe for your future weddings, you can consider doing investment in the Mediterranean.
Then I'll join a wedding party. I'll break a wedding party there. Okay. Thank you. Zeynep Hocam, your hand is up, and I should specifically thank Zeynep. Zeynep is the one who made this translation part of it is possible for us, because while the project was going on, it's an amazing project. When I thought of how we could make this in English available to other people, I couldn't come up with an easy answer. It was Zeynep who really found the answer for us. And Zeynep and I, we are very close because we are mahkemedaş. We were in the same mahkeme in the signatory campaign, so we share that. Maybe Zeynep, we need to send once this is out, the link to the judge who was our judge.
Yes.
Please go ahead, Zeynep. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, I mean, this is a very personal note of gratitude, if I may. And if no one else has a question or something, I mean, I have found the Kültürhane team in person. Finally, I want to thank you for making my dream come true. Because when I was doing my master's project back in 2003 in an art management program, we were asked to plan a cultural place. And I had in mind, a library and a cafe and a performance place where people could get together, make festivals and whatnot. So I worked on that for several months, even prepared the letterheads and the initial activities and the budget. It was a big budget. Of course, it was imaginary, so I could just put anything in the budget. And the name was Kültürhane. But then I thought, I could never realize it because, I would never have that kind of money. So now it's just sitting in some box in my office with all the letterheads and the folders, all the PR material and all that. And so when you guys first founded this, I was like, they did it. And not with a great budget, So it was doable. So thank you. That was what I wanted to say.
Why didn't you share this 5 years ago? I mean, we just for 5 years, we were just...
No, I mean,
but God saved you. God saved you. Allah korudu, because we are just smiling, with laughing. But I mean, it's a big burden.
No, I know it was a tremendous job that you did. Yeah, if I find that box, I will send you the material just for memorabilia. Just if I ever find.
So you say Hümeyra would translate it. Şerefsizim aklıma gelmişti, as was in the famous Turkish movie.
No, but I mean, mine was more like, cici bici, böyle Rönesans festivalleri falan yani. Hani. Okay, anyway. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And also special thanks to Hümeyra as an undergraduate and the other undergraduates who made this possible. I wanted to ask a question to Noémi, but she had to leave because of a time commitment. So maybe Bediz could answer that question. Bediz, the funding aspect of this project. I think, if I remember correctly, you were telling me that you made a point of trying to find some money so that even though it is very symbolic, people could be paid a bit for their labor. And the funding aspect came from Europe, I think. And one of the things that you mentioned was an organization, I believe, that came to being right in the aftermath of what's happening in 2016. And Noémi probably knows more about it, but since she's up, may I ask you, is that organization still going on? Could people apply for funding there, or is it not so much? Do you have any ideas about it?
I'm not sure whether I understood correctly. You mean funds for a payment for the authors in the project, or in general to the peace academics, you mean?
In general, to peace academics. That center, okay. I think it's based in United Kingdom, right? If I remember correctly, I forgot the name of the foundation. Your partner.
The funding institution is the European Endowment for Democracy for this project. But they also financed a previous project called Academia, which supported all of the Solidarity Academies, helped their capacity building, and also financed individually through CDPR, I think. And and we are grateful to both CDPR and EED. But at the beginning of the purge, the Union of Teachers in Turkey managed to raise the funds to pay periodically, on a monthly basis, the dismissed scholars. And this was also very, very important. I think this still continues, but I'm not sure about this. I think it continues, this union's monthly contribution, monthly payment to the dismissed, but yeah. If other colleagues have more information, Meral, maybe do you have any?
There are two hands are raised, Müge Hocam and Civan Bey. Buyurun Müge Hocam, please go ahead.
I just wanted to bring up that I'm on the board of Academy in Exile. That's based in Berlin, and it's run by Kader Kuluk. You know, they are basically financing a lot of students in exile. Academics in exile, sorry. So you can contact her, at least she will give you ideas about it. And she's a comparative literature person and a gender and sexuality scholar. So I'm sure she will know at least what's going on. And then there is Scholars at Risk I work with in the United States. And I also think International PEN also may show interest in this. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Hocam. Civan Bey.
Just briefly.
Oh, please. Yes. Please.
Excuse me. Yes, Fatma Müge Hocam, for this, the problem is those who go abroad, either exile or with scholarships, they are very few in number compared to those who remain in Turkey obligatorily or voluntarily. So what we ask mainly is, of course, it is very important and very valuable to support those who want to pursue their academic work abroad, to support them, but also we would like to draw the attention to the Solidarity Academies or the individual academics here in Turkey who try to produce knowledge in hard conditions. That's also another aspect.
Well, for that, it would be, we did think about that too, when we were talking about in academia in exile. What would be great is if you could get together, because what we could do is we could do it through Zoom or some other things virtually, and then, you know, they can give lectures and then we can reimburse them from overseas. That's one way of doing it. But for that, I don't want to only have, you know, go through our contacts and just the people we tend to know. I mean, you know, if you could maybe, as a part of this, make up a whole list of people who'd be willing to give a talk in English, and maybe what subjects they are interested in, and add their short CVs to it, that will make it possible, because the issue is we don't know who to access, you know, in that. Thank you. And then we could circulate that. And, you know, because I was also going to say, you know, we could Middle East Studies Association and other associations, they put panels together and such. And, you know, but people come outside. I mean, they have to leave, and of course that's not possible. But the other way is to use virtual technology, basically, as a way of resisting the hegemony in Turkey. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. This can be done very easily because the Solidarity Academies have a network, and also Off University, based in Germany, does this for a few years now, offering some tandem lectures with a scholar from outside Turkey and a scholar from within Turkey. And there is an existing database now.
Can go with it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Civan Bey, buyurun, please.
Well, am I being heard clearly? Am I being heard clearly? Okay. Well, I have two interrelated questions. I was wondering if the project includes any objects that directly relate to figures of power. And here I'm thinking specifically of the figure of Atatürk, because obviously the quasi-deification of Atatürk in Turkey is done, among other processes, by the fetishization of objects. I mean, even the pea beans he didn't manage to eat before his demise are preserved at the Dolmabahce Palace, as far as I know. And of course, if there's, you know, a single object one thinks of when one visualizes Atatürk, it would probably be the top hat. So I was wondering if there's an entry for the top hat, and if there's one, has the author of the entry taken into account, well, the evolution of the top hat? Because obviously the top hat worn by Mustafa Kemal and the top hats worn by Kenan Evren and Turgut Özal aren't exactly the same objects. And of course, the hat more generally is, well, I don't need to emphasize that it's also a major object of the Kemalist regime, its power, its coercion strategies, and so on and so forth. So that's one question. And at the other hand of the power spectrum, I'd be interested in knowing if the way ordinary and innocent objects like the door of a house, for instance, can at some point become dangerous objects for the residents of the house. For instance, like when houses Alevi people live in are marked by a sign that indicates that the residents of the house are Alevis. So the stigmatization of the Alevis is done by the stigmatization of the door, as it were. So I was wondering if there are also this kind of examples in the encyclopedia.
Shall I answer?
Evet, Bediz Hocam, please, buyurun.
Okay. Yeah, in fact, our approach was not to single out a person or an event or I don't know, a city. for an object, but through many objects commemorate or remember some topics. So the topic of Atatürk, the fetishization of Atatürk or the Atatürk period is revealed in many objects. For example, sculpture or Atatürk sculptures. For example, the flag. For example, the what was I going to say?
Hat. The hat.
Bediz hocam.
The watch.
Oh, okay.
Duyuluyor mu?
Yeah, your connection was cut for a second, but we can hear you back now. Go ahead.
Okay. I cannot read the broken watch by Bullet, for example. These are all items related to Atatürk, and many the baston. How do you say it? The stick he had in Atatürk Museum now, for example, which is also a rifle. Yeah, can you hear me? I'm not sure about the connection. So there, in many different items, we try to bring about these things. And as for the second question, we do have the object, the door, and with the door, yes, the Alevi doors, which are marked by a cross, are revealed. And in many other objects, very everyday objects can become, can have a very controversial meaning, whether you are from that side or from the other side. I think what we try to do is this, I mean, to give different layers of meanings within every object. Yeah.
Thank you, Sağ olun, Bediz hocam. Let me ask a follow-up question to that. I remember talking with you about this, and you mentioned you made a decision not necessarily to focus on things that will only be associated with one community in terms of different, for instance, confessional communities, but try to bring in the experiences of different confessional communities in Turkey in different articles. It would be interesting, I guess, to maybe mention a few examples. Do, for instance, Greek Orthodox or Armenians or Alevis, Jews, etc., come up in different article topics?
My connection is really bad, so excuse me beforehand if my connection is cut. But yes, we have mentions of different communities in many articles. About examples, but there are so many examples that I can. Can you remember things? For example, the stone, the rock, the taş object. With the taş object, we, for example, the authors, I mean, not we, but the authors mention the stone throwing Kurdish children, but also the rock carvers, the Armenian rock carving artisana, and also many things as such. With handkerchief, we have these stories. So in all of the articles, I can say, we try to really, I mean, we emphasize this, and the authors are, of course, persons who are sensitive in this issue. So we ask them to bring up as many examples as possible from the history of communities or confessions or gender-related issues, and all together.
If I may just add very quickly to what you said, Bediz, it would be great. You probably have a very extensive bibliography, both in English and in Turkish and French and all the other things. I wonder if you're also making the kaynakça available on your website as well, because that will be a good way also to sort of intellectually demonstrate the boundaries, and maybe also new books that come up. I think of, for example, Hegnar Woltenpo's book, about his colleague, where she looks at Armenian history from three pieces of paper of this illumination of an Armenian, Bible, and then how those were in very different places because of the Armenian genocide, and then the whole book is sort of her going from one to the other and connecting all. This is becoming now more and more. I mean, I also know, for example, there are similar books focused only on salt or sugar or indigo. I mean, so that would be another way, because then it will demonstrate how you connect to a much larger literature. Thank you. And I have to go now, but thank you, for this was great.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, for the moment, the bibliographies are on individual articles, but maybe bringing them all together and putting as an annex is an option. Okay. Thanks a lot.
And it would be good for the undergraduates or our students then to use that for their own research. Going forward. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
We and our students can help with bringing the bibliography together. We can have another project for that once all the articles are done.
Yeah.
Atladım böyle ama.
Oh, please, go ahead. Yeah. Why not?
Heyecanlandım da. Once all the articles are done, maybe we could have another undergraduate project, bringing all the bibliography together.
Sure. And some of them are accessible, it sounds like, online, because Bediz Hoca already mentioned there is a digital resources part. So that will be very good. That will be very good. Any other questions from anyone in the audience? We are reaching like 2-hour mark. So we usually do it for an hour and a half, but yeah, I think we are good. Thank you so much again. Ulaş Hocam, buyurun, please go ahead.
Yeah, just a word about your last. I just want to have a brief word about your previous remark about the funding. I mean, solidarity has become a buzzword, I think. I mean, signing petitions, posting, tweeting, all that, honey, we express our solidarity towards others, but our library in Kültürhane is named after our colleague Mehmet Fatih Trash, who committed a suicide because after being rejected by 2 universities. So solidarity, yes, good to feel the support from abroad, that's precious. I have no objection to that. I'm grateful, but the project has also a financial side, and the authors, the editors, all those who worked for this are financed by European Endowment Democracy, and it's not the first time that they funded. I mean, all individual solidarity academicians are, I think, funded by, supported by that, by the organization. So I just want to underline their precious contribution to our, I mean, yes, University in Exile, but exile is not always beyond borders. I mean, sometimes we feel being living in the exile in our own country, in our hometown. So always it's important to have in mind that these people try to survive in a period of earthquake, let's say. So I just want to express my gratitude to all those who supported financially, personally or institutionally, to those who try to survive in these difficult times.
Sağ olun Ulaş Hocam. Thank you. Thank you so much. That is very indeed important. There were those of us who live abroad, like myself, we get to see people who come here But as you mentioned, and Bediz mentioned earlier, many more people than who are here are actually in Turkey, and many of them are not able to go back to academia because of the way in which the system works, and some of them find themselves in very dire situations. So thank you, and that is also why I really wanted to highlight the work that you are all doing. It's very encouraging, and it's amazing. It's basically amazing. Thank you so much for doing all this work and coming here to share with us. I appreciated all your time, and I'll be sharing the couldn't make it here so that you can circulate it more. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye.